Hello, I'm Gui,
I'm a fifth.
And I'm Long.
and you're listening to Kopi Overflow, a monthly podcast about software development. This episode is episode 12, where I guess we celebrate our 1 year anniversary. Yay!
Yay.
Should we sing a song?
Oh, that would be
With,
awkward. Do you want to actually? Do you want to?
Nope.
Yeah, it's fine. So how come this is our 1 year anniversary? Well, because it's our 12th episode and we release one episode every month. So 12 episodes, one per month, which means 12 months, which means a year. So this is our 1 year anniversary. Yeah, I guess a lot of people will be like, it's been 1 year already. I guess because of the frequency we release as well, right? It's like only 12 episodes, but it's definitely been a year already. Can't believe I actually been doing this for a year.
Yeah, I know, right? It's a long time.
My time.
No. Long.
Yes, long. It's been a long time. Yeah, so one thing that we previously talked about in previous episodes was we had a form that people can send in their questions because we wanted to take this opportunity to do a mailbox episode. So we wanted to get questions from everyone and we answered them in the episode. But before we go through those, I want to kind of share some of our data and analytics we have on the platforms that we are on. It's not about showing off. I think when we review the numbers, you will kind of know this is not showing off at all because we don't have huge numbers. But I just want to give people a sense of the scale we have. For me, it's more like a celebration of achievement. No matter how big or small the numbers are, it's like progress. That's why I want to do, kind of like sharing our data analytics. Okay, so jumping right in, let's start with YouTube. We have 25 subscribers. Unfortunately, we're not big, but all right, I'm okay with that. Our most viewed episode is actually episode 6, which is the one we talked about site reliability engineering. That has 35 views. That episode also has the most engagement, most likes at 8, and also the most comments. Now, if you look at our total overall YouTube uploads, you would notice episode 0 actually has the highest view count, but I don't consider that because that's like a big of a fluke. For me, for example, when I uploaded the episode, I definitely tried to play it a few times. Just like, make sure everything's okay, and then I click through it, and that sort of thing, and then I listened through the entire episode and such things like that. So that definitely checked up the view count quite a bit. So I wouldn't consider that to be our most viewed episode.
I may have contributed like 2 or 3.
I think I did that as well. I think I was refreshing stuff.
Yeah, that's normal, right? Because it's like our first uploaded, so it's like so worried, so kanchong. I want to see. Okay, so that's for YouTube. Moving on to Anchor. So Anchor is the platform we use to upload to all the other podcasting sites. So Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and everything else that Anchor offers, we upload through Anchor FM. So episode 6, which is the SRE episode as well, has the most plays, which is at 36 plays. So this counts across all the platforms. Right? It's a cumulative count across all the platforms. It's not just like from Spotify or Apple or Google Podcasts, but all the platforms add up together. That's the place that we have. Our second most played episode is actually episode 2, which is open source. Not surprising, I guess. These two tend to be people tend to look for these topics, I guess.
Popular keyword.
Yeah, popular keywords, popular search terms, probably. And we have, for third most plays, at 14 plays, we have 2 episodes, which is episode 5, networking, and episode 8, pull request review. So for the networking one, I'm not sure it's like people are searching for like how to do cloud networking better or that sort of thing.
How to configure the DNS and what.
Yeah, and then they play the episode, it's like, what are they talking about? Like, networking.
Clickbait.
It's not intentional.
Unfortunate overlap of terms.
Or maybe fortunate.
Fortunate for us, not unfortunate for them.
Yeah, and pull request review as well, I guess, because a lot of people are doing pull requests, so maybe it's a popular search term as well. So yeah, so those 4 episodes are among the most top 3 played. Let's look at geographical location because I found this interesting. So at 48% is Malaysia. I think that's expected because we market this a lot to our friends and our network as well, right? So everybody's from Malaysia, so that's expected already. But what surprised me was like the second and third. So at the second was US, actually, at 28%. I'm not sure why people in the US are listening to us, but thank you very much if you are from the US and continue to listen to us. And also the third is actually UK at 6%. So yeah, thank you all of you who continuing to tune into us.
Anchor means that they're using podcasts, so I guess they discover it from like either Spotify or Apple or Google Podcasts. Maybe they're searching for something and then found our episode.
And also English, I guess.
Yeah, and could be recommended through like Spotify's recommendation or the other podcast platforms' recommendation as well. Because I think we fall under science and tech as well. So if people are interested in that area of topic, it'll probably get recommended to them.
And going back a bit on like our most popular episode 6, maybe because we have a guest, Maddie, was our stars.
So he helps promote as well, right? Like, hey, I'm on this. And then more people will actually. But I also think a lot of people are curious about that. So it becomes a very hot search term as well. Like people are just interested in what SRE is. Moving on, let's talk about listening platforms. Basically, the apps that people listen our podcast on. So at 41%, first is Spotify. Next, we have web browser at 10%. So I'm not sure why this is a category, but it's there, so I just take it. Maybe this counts through, like, if you open Spotify through web browser. I'm actually not too sure what this counts because they also didn't explain what this is. But I'm assuming this is, like, through the web rather than through the app. And at third place is Apple Podcasts at 9%.
I definitely know some people who prefer the web browser version of Spotify rather than using the Spotify app, so that might count. Does Apple or Google Podcast has a web browser version of them?
I have no idea. I'm not sure how the state now, but back then, I think Spotify and Linux didn't play that well. I know some Linux users actually use Spotify exclusively on the web, so could be that.
Ah, okay. But I want to tie in that to as well because I also gotten some data on the listening devices. So I only took the top 3, of course. And I don't think there are other... Let me look at it real quick. Oh, there are others. Okay. That's a bit weird. Anyway, the top 3 of the listening devices that I pull out from the data we have is the first is iPhone at 25%, Android at 19%, and third is Windows at 8%. I'm going to assume people who use their mobile devices would use the apps more, and then maybe those who are on Windows might use the web if they didn't install the app already. So maybe that's that. Because on the breakdown of the devices, there's no Linux or no Linux or Mac breakdown. So it's like iPhone, Android, Windows, web, and others. Actually, now that I look at it, others is actually the highest. Hold on, let me check real quick. Yeah, others is actually the highest. So I guess it's like done line. Everything else, which probably might be Linux or Mac actually because they don't have the breakdown here. Maybe that's why browser is high percentage as well. But yeah, I guess this is a shout out to everybody as well who's listening. Thank you for all your support. And, just to let you know, we aren't purposefully collecting this data without your consent. It's through the platform, okay?
It's okay, no personally identifiable information.
Yeah, at least nothing reaches us, okay? So...
Privacy is a hard software engineering problem.
Alright, so the last thing to talk about for our social media analytics part is actually our Twitter account. So that's our only active social media account we have actually. So we have, as of recording date, 47 followers and we've done 20 tweets. I think it's okay.
12 of those tweets must be our episodes. So we actually did 8 tweets, I guess.
That's not about the episode.
Yeah, not about episode. I mean, we aren't actively using Twitter to kind of promote this as well. It's really through a lot of word of mouth. So okay, so that's all the data and analytics part.
I wonder if the second highest episode on YouTube is also the what was it? The networking stuff and also the open source. Open source.
Let me take a quick look. Second highest is actually onboarding. Our first episode, onboarding. On YouTube, our second highest view episode is actually episode 1, onboarding. After that is actually networking and pull request review. So yeah, those are quite high actually. If there is a consistency in the numbers.
You know what? There's one thing I'm so glad that our episode names can always be referred using a single word. It's like, oh wow, that's easy to remember. The networking one, okay, the SRE one, and we immediately know which episode is it.
Good observation, Long.
I like that.
So let's move on to the mailbox. Mailbox time. So we've gotten 2 submissions. To be frank, I don't know how to feel about getting 2 submissions.
Better than nothing.
Well, yeah, I guess could feel happy because we get at least some submissions. Also, at the same time, it's like a bit sad we only got 2. But I guess, yeah, you say long is better than nothing.
Let's base it on our Twitter followers. 40 plus people. 2 out of 40 plus. Not a bad number.
Well, that's about like
5%. About 5%.
yeah, it's about that. So I guess if you are thinking about doing something similar, you can use the same ratio. We're not like world famous influencers, so your numbers may vary.
I mean, to be fair, we're not even actively promoting this. So.
Yeah. Right. So the first question we got is from Wilson. He's asking, why is all software development problems hard or difficult in your podcast?
It suddenly occurred to me when we read this question. Is it about the naming of our episode, how we name our episode? So that's why we always suffix our episodes with ABC is a hard software development problem. Or is it why we choose this topic that's regarded as hard software development problem? For the first one, I think we just follow what we have since the episode 0, because episode 0 was about naming, and that's the famous saying, like naming things is one of the hardest thing in software development. And on why we choose what's hard, I guess that's also just because of the name. Since we already have the name of the episode, then we just sort of use it as a guidance, I guess, to choose our topics.
Yeah, I mean, if anyone's really interested about the history, you can listen to actually episode 0. Actually, that's like the whole thing we got started, and we were actually behind the scenes discussing on like what to name the podcast and what should we do and not do in the podcast. And then we keep repeating, it's like, oh, naming things is a hard problem, naming things is a hard problem. Actually, I kind of run with like, you know what, let's just name every episode whatever is a hard software development problem. So it is a running gag, like Long mentioned. And it also becomes a guide. Indirectly, it also becomes a guide. I think Long mentioned this as well. It becomes a guide on selecting the topics we want to talk about. So sometimes we would have like, oh, we wanted to talk about this, but we can't really translate it well into title on like X is a hard software development problem. Then we're like, okay, maybe we can just talk about this specific thing. So that, oh, that sounds better. So that also becomes a guide on what are the topics that we choose. And I think the reason why we choose the topics we talk about also are because they are quote unquote hard problems. I guess it's like, for example, pull request review and testing. These are things that developers will talk about, you know, amongst themselves and complain, or even like form developments. People will tweet complain nonstop. But yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why we also choose the topic we chose, because those are the things that I wouldn't say feel strongly about. These are nice topics to talk about, and these are, if you're in software development, natural things to talk about with your colleagues and that sort of thing. So I guess that's why we chose the topic we chose.
Maybe we should do a ABCs, not a hard software development problem episode.
Is there such a thing?
As you are in the industry longer, you'll find that actually everything is not as simple as it seems. If you want to select an easy thing to talk about in podcasts, like what do you want to talk about? We have 3 people and there's not a lot of ideas throwing around if it's like something easy, right? So like we choose hard problems so that we can discuss about it. The easy problems are already.
Yeah, and I don't want us just to be like a yes person podcast, right? It's like, oh, yeah, Afif, I agree. Yeah, Long, I agree. Yeah, great, I agree. It's like, then what's the point? For one, it doesn't make for a very interesting listening experience. And maybe it'll feel like a waste of time for us to say, yeah. What's the point? And I think one thing definitely, we'll probably talk about this more in a bit, but one thing I definitely feel is that 3 of us have diverse opinions on things. So I think that's one good thing. For example, Long and Afif are more opinionated towards UX. I have no opinions. I mean, not as much opinions. Okay, I cannot say no opinions. I got opinions also. But not as much opinion. So that's where they will weigh in. Right? Also, things that we talk about, for example, I'm trying to think of like a very strong thing we disagree on, but I can't think of any on top of my mind. But I know throughout the episodes we do disagree on certain parts as well, and then we talk about it briefly.
I think we disagree on a couple of things on the pair programming episode. Did we?
I think every episode also got a few things here and there.
We just talk about it very diplomatically, I guess. So discussing it properly.
We're not gonna fight over this through our microphones.
Maybe drama makes for good content. I don't know.
Drama is a hard software development problem.
Should we go back to the question? Mailbox question?
Yes, no, I wanted to wrap the question up already. Okay, cool. So the second question we got from an anonymous listener was, how do you deal with office politics? So when I saw this question, I was thinking office politics is actually a very broad topic to kind of address in one go, because office politics is, as a term, is so broad. And I was thinking, like, is there a specific here? Like, is there, for example, power dynamics? Is it your relationship with your manager is an area you want to address? Or is it a peer relationship that you kind of want to address? Because politics is all about the relationship in anywhere, actually, but since we're talking about office politics, would be relationship in the office. If you really want to squint at it, pull requests can be politics as well, right? It's like, hey, why you reject my code? Or this engineer don't like me, that's why you keep rejecting my PR, right? So I don't have an actual very specific answer for this, to be frank, because for me, office politics is very broad, and depending on the case, of all the cases I mentioned earlier, is it power dynamics, is it peer relationship, or is it even pull request, right? If an engineer keep rejecting your pull request, then you have beef with them. It's like, oh, do they hate me, or is it because of some other things? Right? So there are different ways to handle this sort of thing. So unfortunately, I don't have a very straightforward answer for this, because it feels very broad and I don't have a broad stroke answer to it. But one thing I did remember when I was preparing to answer this question was, way back when I started in my career, I was reading this book called Network Warrior. So it's written by network engineers for network engineers. So one of the later chapters in the book, the author talked about politics as well, right? Office politics and that sort of thing. And one thing that stood with me till today was, and I paraphrase, is that when two people are in a room, it is politics already. And not to say that that term is harmful, like politics as a term is harmful, but because you're dealing with interrelationship and how you work with people. So that is a form of politics already. So I just kind of want to put this out there.
So I think what Gui brought up is actually very true. It's very broad, and it's like asking a question: how do you deal with country politics, national politics? It's like, oh, which part of the politics?
Complain on Twitter.
Yeah. But to answer the question, I think for me, it's like I don't have any frameworks or strategy tactics about dealing with office politics or rather organizational politics. I think it's just human interaction. So how you want to interact with other human beings, working in teams or in organizations. And I feel like that term, office politics, is always like used as a blanket term to hide some other actual problems or dysfunctions in the organization or the team. Thing is this quote from the author of the 5 Dysfunctions book. What's the full book name? I forgot.
5 Dysfunctions of a Team, I think.
Yeah. So it's like politics is when people try to say words or choose their actions based on how they want other people to respond instead of based on what they really want to say or want to act. Sounds like manipulation, but politics in a way is about manipulation or influence. Yeah.
Just to like make sure we're not cancelled. Sorry to bite it along. I guess we don't actively use manipulation as a tool, right? We don't actively manipulate how people perceive us and all. It's really just like this interaction. How can we make it genuine and that sort of thing? But yeah.
Like I said, it's all human interaction after all. And since we are in software development, I just want to like scope this down to maybe in just software development teams instead of like the whole office, unless your whole office is just software development teams. I guess maybe it's about misalignments that cause these things. Maybe that's the problem that you should look at, misalignment on goals, or there's people having expectation not met, those kind of things, instead of just put it under one blanket term like office politics.
I think maybe what you just brought up earlier could be a good source as well. It's been a while since I read the book, so I don't remember the contents anymore. 5 Dysfunctions of a Team might be a place you can start with as well. Yeah, again, I don't remember a lot from the book, but Long, do you remember anything from the book?
Oh, I think there's a pyramid, right? The 5 dysfunctions. At the very bottom part, I remember the one is like lack of trust. So that's everything starts spiraling out from there. When you don't have trust between team members, eventually evolve into some sort of political wars in the office or something. I'm gonna reject your pull request from now on because you rejected mine. Something.
Oh, grudge.
Yeah, I know, right? Because there's distrust, right? Like you cannot confidently accept critiques from people you don't trust. Still, so that's my take.
Yeah, Dysfunction of a Team definitely covers a lot of team dynamics, which also comes back to like which part of the office politics is kind of the one that you want to deal with, right? So 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, like Long mentioned, since he brought up the pyramid, I have a vague memory of that as well. And I remember a lot of the things in the book and all talks a lot about like within one team dynamic, right? But if you have, for example, issue with higher management or maybe some other things outside of your own team, then maybe there are better materials out there you could refer to. Afif, you got anything to add?
I think you guys have covered most of what I wanted to say. Yeah, I agree that the term is quite broad, and it's really hard to give any one solution that fits all. Each of the situations have to be dealt with a different way, because if it involves another person, then another person has a different, every person has their own personality. You cannot use the same solution. Let's say you have one problem and you use this one solution to this person, and then you cannot actually take that same solution for another person if it ever comes up again. For example, it's really complex, I guess, but anything that deals with people is quite complex.
Yeah, but that's why we choose our job, right? So we don't have to deal with people. But it turns out software development is a highly human interaction activity. So somehow we landed a job that requires the most human interaction. Yeah, just to like continue building on what just Afif mentioned. Right? For example, let's say a very common scenario is choosing tooling. For example, you might want to think, hey, I want to use this particular CIX, okay? Maybe someone in the team say, no, CIY is better. So how you want to convince, or at least attempt to convince your team member, will be very different to convince your, let's say, manager or someone above that, because the concerns of, for example, the team is very different from the concerns of the manager as well, right? So manager might be thinking about, okay, can the team pick this up? What about the cost in terms of learning this technology? What about financial costs or that sort of thing? Your team member might be like, hey, this one very old technology, don't want to use got something cooler, newer, that sort of thing. So the concerns are very different, which is why we keep, I know it sounds annoying by now, but which is why we keep saying it's very case by case on how you want to tackle this office politics. Okay, I think we've beat this horse enough already. So I guess we can move on. So as part of the form, we also asked a question about what we would like to hear us talk more about in the future. And one of the feedback we got was to have more controversial topics. So when I look at this, was like, okay, this is a very broad, I mean, I'm definitely thankful for the suggestion, right? Taking it into consideration, which is why we're talking about it. But the first thing that came to my thought was, okay, this is a broad suggestion. What are controversial topics? And I was thinking, like, is space versus tabs a controversial topic? But I think all of us here agree spaces is better than tabs, right?
I use spaces.
I use spaces, I can't complain.
There's something to argue.
Which is why it's not a topic, because we all agree about it.
I do want to take note on like some of the things I have observed and been trying to think about better ways to do it. I do agree we are playing it very safe. Not just topic selection, but also the things we talk about as well.
But that's by design, right? Like that's our intention in a way that when we started.
So this is where it's gonna get controversial, Long. I definitely sometimes feel like we can be a bit more spicier in our discussion. I definitely feel like there are some times that I definitely, Long, I don't agree with that. But a lot of times, I don't think I could, like, for example, go into detail about what I disagree with. Like, for example, Long, you brought up something and then I want to disagree with it. Sometimes it's because of time constraint, right? We recorded so long already and we want to keep our podcast compact as well, so people don't get too bored and that sort of thing. So like, we're almost reaching a certain time or reaching our time limit. So, and I also feel one thing is that a lot of times when we talk about, for example, like 13 episode, open source episode, right, there's so much other topics we haven't covered yet. So let's talk about it next time. Right? And I think because of that, we always touch on very surface level kind of thing. Like we cover breadth more than depth. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's just these are my observations. So yes, length, because we set kind of a hard limit on the length time that we record on. And then after that we do editing, and then that's how the episode come out. So if you notice why all the episode lengths are different, it's because of mostly editing. We record a fixed length every time, actually almost fixed length. But talking about this, personally, I would like us to be spicier at times during discussion. We don't have to purposely choose a very controversial topic. I'm not saying like, we must choose something controversial, but it's good to highlight different viewpoints, but then take into consideration about, we don't want it to be too quote-unquote offensive, as well as we also take into consideration the time and length for recording. So I think those are the few things we consider a lot as well.
Gui, you also mentioned something before this recording that I think I agree, that we don't really have like very, very strong opinions on stuff, right? So we are open to suggestions and stuff.
I think it's good sometimes to talk about hard topics, provided we think very clearly what is it we want to talk about, if it's like a quote-unquote hard or controversial topic. For example, like estimation episode. I think one thing I wish I could have done better in the estimation episode was be more upfront about my feelings towards estimation, right? When I listen back, if it feels like I was kind of, yeah, you can kind of use it and all, but my personal opinion on estimation is just don't do it. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of time to do estimation. But this is where the but comes in, right? This is where like we can kind of understand there is another viewpoint to this, right? I have seen teams that maintain the discipline in setting the expectation of estimations. What is a size 1, size 2, size 4 kind of story or feature or whatever, and they constantly realign the team's expectation on what is a 1, 2, 4. They have the discipline, so it becomes that okay, everybody, the PMs and management has a very clear idea of what 1, 2, 4 means. They work well with business, they work well with PM, but that discipline itself requires a lot of work, requires a lot of discipline, and not many teams can do that. That's why it comes back to my easiest answer is just don't do estimations. But that's not how the business world works, right? Also, I don't want to dive into too much on that episode. I wish I put out a stronger opinion on how I felt as well. But at the same time, I think this is also one thing we do keep in mind, which is there's a balance to everything, right? And we also want to highlight that if you find use in it, if you use it well, I mean, whatever you do, go ahead. Of course, like in the form episode, we talked about form design. There are some bad things you should never do, so do not do that.
And my take on this question is, personally, I prefer podcasts that's more calm or chill in nature, because I usually listen to podcasts when I'm doing something else. I don't pay like full attention to the podcast that I'm listening to. I'm not sure if that's what everyone does. At least that's what I do. So I tend to not prefer to listen to things that are too controversial using a podcast. Not that I don't care. It's just that I feel like podcast is not that type of media that I want to consume about these topics. Should we have controversial topics in podcasts? Is this a controversial topic?
From at least what I feel, I mean, both of you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that we don't really want to touch upon like controversial topics as a say. Like we don't really want to talk about a controversial topic in a episode entirely. At least for me, it's more of, oh, if I have an opposing view about something like long enough to talk about, and depending on time and all, maybe we can go deeper into that. At least that's an area I feel that I could improve on in the podcast.
I also want to add something to what Long said. It's not just for listeners who want to have a calm podcast. We want to also be calm in our recording as well, right? So we're doing this out of our like weekends and stuff, and we don't need one more thing for us to be stressful. Let's say we have a like very controversial topic where we just fight to the teeth, and then it's like I just come out from the room like looking, I just fought with Long and Gui about spaces and Vim. Yeah, and then I have to go and record another controversial topic next month with Long and Kui. And I'm not gonna do that, yeah. So it's not just for the listeners, it's also for us, for our sanity.
But I definitely do value this feedback, definitely. I think it's something we could try, but we definitely need more time to think about this, and also how controversial we want to be. We're definitely not trying to speedrun getting cancelled here.
Yeah, we probably won't choose a controversial topic. We'll just choose a topic, and then we probably have a strong opinion on it, that it becomes a bit more like,
So that we can have more diverse view.
Yeah, we're not going to choose like some political stuff or something. I think that's in our do's and don'ts from our first episode, right? We definitely don't want to touch like political stuff.
Maybe office politics, but not international politics. World politics. Country politics.
So yeah, those were the submissions we got from, well, everybody. And I guess I'm saying this a few times already, but once again, thanks to everyone who actually sit down and fill up the form and submitted questions. Wilson and also anonymous listener. But yeah, so thankful at least. Definitely some interesting things that we think about and have the opportunity to discuss here as well. I think it's alright to end the episode here. Again, can't believe we actually made it 1 year. Well, I say that, but when I started this, I don't think I told both of you this, but when I started this, I definitely wanted to at least reach 1 year and then decide whether to continue or not. So it's been going okay so far. So we'll definitely be continuing on. If you ever decide to stop, we'll let you all know. Don't worry.
It's a milestone.
It is. Still can't believe it. It's just like, every month we meet and record, and then it's like, do editing and the episode is out. And then next month we record again.
We mastered the art of keep showing up. Just show up every month.
No matter how not ready you are, just show up.
Yeah, we make the best of everything we could. Okay, so yeah, we talked about all the data analytics earlier, so please boost our numbers there.
So that we can get sponsors.
It's just a running gag now. I'm pretty sure sponsors, when they hear the numbers, it's like, huh? Like that only? We are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and everything else on Anchor FM. Follow us on Twitter as well, Kopi Overflow. That's all right. I didn't miss anything, all right?
Subscribe to YouTube.
Yep, subscribe to YouTube as well.
Hit the bell button.
Don't let your copy overflow.
Yeah, don't let your copy overflow.
Thanks for the 1 year, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.